What the hell is the veil? Ah, yes. Today we're gonna try to dive into this question and answer it because I think all of us have wondered what the hell is the veil. It was first mentioned actually by Rasputin in his final message to us before he sacrificed himself to save the Traveler, and then later during the Lightfall campaign, it was all Callus, the Witness, and Osiris cared about. Capture the veil, protect the veil, establish a connection to the veil, make love to the veil. By the end of the campaign, you would think we would know something about the veil, but obviously our Guardian ask literally zero questions. Even after a connection is established to the Traveler and the Witness opens a portal that he and the other pyramid ships go right through, all of these questions still remain unanswered. That is, until the Root of Nightmares raid. We believe Bungie is slowly revealing what the veil is over the next few seasons, which will have huge story implications on the world of Destiny. Let's begin with what we know about the veil. As mentioned earlier, we first learned about the veil from Rasputin. The veil is described as an object of immense paracausal power. Its location is on Neomuna, and it has a connection with the Traveler. Now, once the Witness arrives on Earth and communes with the Traveler, it sees a vision of the veil on Neptune, and it instructs Callus to capture it. He explains in a conversation with Callus that the final shape awaits, and that the veil is but the next step. Now, once we arrive at the veil, we defeat Callus, but unfortunately our ghost straight up throws via the Witness taking control of him and creates a link with the veil, allowing him to open up this giant portal next to the Traveler, and him and all the pyramid ships just go straight inside. Now, understand that this portal is to some unknown time or place. And the reason why we say time and place is because in the piece of dialogue presented as public news broadcasts on Neomuna, we are actually given this information.
With Neomuna Civil News, this is Jisoo Calorondo reporting. Scientists continue to study the alien structure the Witness created from the remains of the Traveler. The link established between the veil and the Traveler's so-called Pale Heart created a portal through which the Pyramid Fleet leader escaped. Professor Alagi Ahmed commented, "It appears to be an Einstein-Rosen bridge, but with paracausality, little can be said for certain." Stay tuned to Neomuna Civil News for updates.
Now, for those of you who are not familiar with thermonuclear astrophysics, an Einstein-Rosen bridge is basically a wormhole, which could potentially mean the Witness didn't just go to a different location, but also went backward or forward in time. Now, during the exotic quest for deterministic chaos, we learned that the Vex were working on a copycat veil. This was the heart of the Black Garden that we destroyed in Destiny 1. And during that original campaign, we were told by the Exo Stranger that only after we destroyed the Black Heart that the Traveler would begin to heal. This means that whatever the Vex of the Soul Divisive, who served the Witness by the way, made, this had a connection to the Traveler. This has always been a point of confusion because the Witness said that the Pale Heart of the Traveler holds the key. Some have even theorized that the Pale Heart of the Traveler was the veil. But then going back to the Neomuna broadcast, the veil established a link to the Pale Heart, meaning those are two entirely different things. Now, it's made very clear that whatever the Witness did, he doesn't want us repeating it. In the Lightfall campaign, the Witness took Callus to first use the radio mass, establish a link to the veil, and then destroy it. The Vex who created the Black Heart, the conceptual mind, is also attacked by the Taken to prevent us from acquiring the secret data it contains about the copycat veil. It's basically a foregone conclusion at this point that if we're going to follow the Witness, who we assume is inside the Traveler, then we need to figure out how to use the veil. New subclass? Now that answers the question as to why the veil is important, but we still don't know what it is. And I love that Bungie's like, yo, here's a picture of it. Now you know. This literally tells us nothing, Bungie. But let's take a look at the lore surrounding how the veil arrived on Neptune. Now, we first learned a year ago that Savathun used to be in cahoots with the Witness before the first collapse. But during the exotic quest for the Parasite Grenade Launcher, her worm told us how she deceived the Witness to protect the Traveler. Savathun has always been a baddie. Now, back when this dialogue was first released, we had no idea what Savathun did to deceive the Witness. But post-Lightfall, we now know hiding the veil was a huge part of her deception. Now, in the interactive trailer for Lightfall, Bungie revealed that Savathun had rebelled against the Witness and hid what might be our only chance of defeating it on Neptune. And in the lore for the Root of Nightmares raid, we got a real confirmation that yes, Savathun was the one who hid the veil away on Neptune. Now, while traversing through the Witness's pyramid, Nezarec gives us this line of dialogue.
After that witch killed me and cursed my remains, I assume that's when she whisked away the veil to Neptune. The coveted key to the Witness's plans, and the sapid secret of its first victims. As much as I loathe her, I must applaud her efforts.
Again, the more and more we learn about Savathun, the more we start to think that she may actually be our greatest ally. Now, on top of this verbal confirmation from Nezarec, the new raid exotic shotgun describes in more detail the moment when Savathun killed Nezarec. The sound that escaped me resembled a roar, a psychic echo. It soared through the air and pierced every corner of my ship. Anger coursed through me as I toppled the ground in a heap. I wheezed with each breath and clutched at my chest. I watched that witch saunter out with her thick thighs and her beautiful smile. Like she'd want. My ship rumbled as she wrested her primordial prize from it. I felt hatred, deep, unchallenged hatred. My claws punctured the floor, etching new patterns into it. I dragged myself forward. Whispers danced around me. Trillions of voices melted together in my favorite symphony. I'd always welcomed death, and this time would be no different. An agonizing sensation shot through me. It was as if an arrow had bored its way through my chest. It burned, and I collapsed among the rubble. A green hue enveloped me. I was unfamiliar with this. Her magic festering within me, shackling me. My body twisted. My breaths grew thin. My limbs became heavy, torturous. No, she could not hold me. I would not allow it. This would not be my end. My witness, I whispered, as the void I once commanded claimed me. Now we find one line in this entire lore tab particularly interesting. My ship rumbled as she wrestled her primordial prize from it. Now there's a clever tie-in to the Lightfall campaign here. After the witness reprimands Callus for losing control of the Veil, Callus refers to it as a glittering prize. Now given the history of both Nezarec and Callus, their personalities shape how they describe the object. Both refer to it as a prize though. The word primordial most definitely asserts that the Veil has existed for a very long time. Whether it's been under the witness's control since its inception is unknown, but maybe there's some other clues as to where it was when it was created. By the way, spoiler, we believe that there is. Now going back to the same dialogue we read earlier where Nezarec describes the Veil, the coveted key to the witness's plans, and the sapid secrets of its first victims. The Veil is said to contain sapid secrets of its first victims. It, we're assuming, refers to the witness's first victims. Now, could the Veil contain information about past civilizations similar to the OXA Machine? But wait, what if the Veil is the OXA Machine? Whoa, hold up. This is way above our pay grade, but we have to dive into this. The last time we read of the OXA Machine being used is actually during the Midnight Coup against Emperor Callus. The Scion, Otsat, used the OXA Machine to transmit communications between the Cabal insurrectionists to plan their coup. Now, this is a psychic device, one that the Scions consulted with to see visions of the past and future. Now, in the Collector's Edition lore book from the launch of Destiny 2, Callus gives a backstory for each of the Cabal that betrayed him. Before talking about Gaul, he tells a story from the OXA Machine of a small people who lived on a dangerous world, whose king forced them to eat larvae to gain strength over their enemies. Now, if this sounds familiar, it's because it's the story of the Hive on Fundament. The OXA Machine contains information of civilizations long since past. Now, from the Kaida lore book in the Lightfall Collector's Edition, we get even more insight on the OXA Machine, the Odile, Xenotaph, and Archive. Sometimes, Oxta, depending on how you construct the acronym. The alien oracle that led us to the graves of Ark. Must be wary now. Oxa is a Scion myth, and the Scions are a sensitive topic. My father wants to free them from bondage. It claimed to record the story of the galaxy and to prophesize what may yet come. A black box for galactic civilizations, if you prefer it in pilot terms. The doomed and the damned left the record of their downfall in the Oxa. Now, does anyone else find it odd? The OXA Machine just happens to be mentioned in the Lightfall Collector's Edition, and we have yet to see direct mention of it in game. Is it just us? Because the doomed and the damned left the record of their downfall in the Oxa, and the sapid secrets of the witness's first victims seems very similar. Mylan actually made a video pre-Lightfall about the Collector's Edition, but it was mainly focused on Teox, who is the Hive broodmother who had been fleeing from the three Hive sisters of Fundament, that being Oryx, Savathun, and Zevur Wrath. Now, we don't know where Teox is, but the new acronym for OXA Machine can be arranged to spell out Teox. Interesting connection. Again, if you want to hear even more depth on this, go check out Mylan's video. It's fantastic. Now, we have yet to look at a very important piece of lore added in Lightfall. This is from the Inspiral Roots of Nightmares lore book. You can find these pages scattered throughout the Witness's Pyramid when you play through the raid. Now, the first of these lore tidbits is called the Habitable World. Let's just read a piece of this real quick. A dream of a world in unity. Millennia gone by, alien and familiar at once. It leaves a data fragment to mark its passing. After the informant had come, bringing reports of the end of the ammonite by the sword of the festering hive, we did not get no disaster. Unusual signals at the edges of our habitable world suddenly had meaning. The intelligence thrice over credible enough to mobilize. And yet, those at the core of our united ecumene did not know the sense of fear. It has been long since the war began. The habitable world shrinks by the moment. We know not what the future holds, but crisis and fear. I set this day in memory so that we will know. When the lessons are taught in some warless future, unbreathed but true in the fragile hope all of us shelter. Fear did not come suddenly. The first harbingers of violence arrived on the same winds as joy. That of value must be cherished, for it may already be too late. In the deep may we be kept. Now, for those of you who don't recognize the events taking place in this lore tab, this is the civilization called the Ecumene, who were conquered by the Hive over a millennia ago. Teox is actually the informant who warns the Ecumene of the impending attack. And despite the warning, the Ecumene Empire, just as many before and after, would fall to the sword of the Hive. Granted, they put up a hell of a fight. Now, what's very intriguing about this and every other lore card from the raid is that they all start with that same similar opening. Card 1, the habitable world. A dream of worlds in unity, millennium gone by, alien and familiar at once. It leaves a data fragment to mark its passing. Then card 2, a sword and an edge. A phantasm of Hive, forbidden and sacred, trespassing into hidden and unwelcoming places. It leaves behind a calcified fragment to mark its passing. And then card 3, the arts of symbiosis. A trance imagining of darkness sweet like honey. A life refracted through another's eyes like splintered light. It leaves behind an imperfectly translated data fragment to mark its passing. Are you seeing the pattern here, guys? All of these lore cards dive into completely different stories spanning different times, locations, characters, and all of them start with these same lines. Fragments of some type of data to mark their passing. Now, why would the witness ship have traces of all this data unless he was in possession of a record of civilizations whose stories could be accessed centuries past their destruction? Now, this does pose one question. If the veil was on Nezarec's pyramid, why are the records on the witness ship? Best answer, I don't know. Why was Nezarec's head on the witness ship after being stuck on the lunar pyramid? Now, the witness was obviously relocating some things between both ships at some point, and it's entirely possible that when Nezarec was moved, so too were these data fragments. Or maybe this is just one of those video game moments. Believe me, guys, it's a head scratcher. Either way, the fact of these remnants of data exist in the first place is reason enough, though, to be suspicious. The OXA Machine was used by the Scions in the past, so by no means is it a far stretch to believe that Nezarec, who by the way was worshipped by the Scions and possessed great psionic power, would also be able to use it to achieve the witness's goals. Now, it was at this point, while making this video, that we thought we had exhausted all the possible connections that existed between the OXA and the Veil, but boy were we wrong. There is an entirely new can of worms that is even more convincing that the OXA Machine and the Veil are one and the same, or at least very similar. Do you remember the Insight Terminus strike? This is actually the first time the OXA was mentioned in the game. There's actually 2 pieces of dialogue that can play once you finish the strike.
Location secured, Commander Zavala.
Good work, Guardian. What intel did you discover?
There's an almost unreadable data artifact here labeled OXA. It's heavily corrupted, but I'm able to make out MSund12 from the access log. What is OXA, and who was MSund12? Location secured, Commander Zavala.
Good work, Guardian. What intel did you discover?
There's only one data artifact here, labeled OXA, and it's seriously corrupted. Metadata says it was last accessed by an Otzot centuries ago. What is OXA, and who is Otzot?
Those are questions for another day, I suppose. But for now, well done.
Now, these data artifacts are pieces of intel pulled from the Vex network. Now, we already know about Otzot, but who was MSund12? Now, MSund12 is an abbreviation for Maya Sundaresh 12. She was a lead researcher at the Ishtar Collective on Venus. She and her team were responsible for a great many things. They studied the Vex network on Venus, and during their studies, they found 227 copies of themselves simulated by the Vex in the network. Now, using a war mine, they extracted the copy of themselves from the network and sent them back out into the network to conduct research for them. It is the 12th version of Maya Sundaresh that access information pertaining to the OXA Machine in the Vex network. Later, Maya founded the Future War Cult and created the device based on Vex technology. The device allowed humans to see into the future or other timelines. This device was actually rediscovered after the collapse, leading to this incident here. 47 human subjects. 11 report timelines in which the darkness has already prevailed. 13 report timelines in which the city has fallen. 23 babbled madness, hopeless, trapped. No wonder the device was abandoned. The human mind is too weak for it, too weak to look into the future or to understand what it sees. Interesting that Maya managed to create a device that, despite its failures, allowed humans to access visions of the future. Now, this is not the end of Maya's story. You may have already heard how a single colony ship survived the collapse and began the civilization of Neomuna. The ship that survived was called Exodus, Indigo, and guess who was on that ship? None other than Maya Sundaresh and her team of researchers. This is fully detailed in the Winterbite Exotic Lore tab. They pick up a Vex signal from the outer solar system and follow it to its source, which was Neptune. Now, there are also locations on Neomuna named after members of the Ishtar research team. Maya's Retreat and SI Terminal, which are derived from the names of researchers Maya Sundaresh and Kioma SI. By the way, if I'm killing these names, that's pretty much on brand for us. Now, this is why in the final mission of Lightfall, the Veil is contained within an Ishtar collective facility. They were the founders of Neomuna. Now, Nimbus actually tells us during the campaign that the Cloud Ark, the virtual recreation of Neomuna, where all citizens currently live, is connected to and powered by the Veil. It's obvious that the Veil is more than just a power source to run Neomuna servers. It's somehow facilitating the interaction of human consciousness on the virtual plane. And all of Neomuna's citizens' bodies are stored within bunkers and cryopods, while their minds roam free in the digital landscape. The only parallel to this technology we see in Destiny is the creation of Exos. It was Clovis who discovered to host an exo consciousness requires Vex radiolaria that has been exposed to clarity control. These are the giant statues of darkness power inside the pyramid ships and the deep stone crypt. Technology combined with paracausality. Now, Bungie has made it very clear during the development for Strand that they wanted to adhere to the philosophies of darkness and light power. Light is all about creation. Darkness is all about consciousness. When we wield Strand, we're tapping into psychic dimensions, opening our third eye, and reweaving the strings of reality into weapons of our bidding. The Veil is also speculated to be the root cause as to why Strand is so prevalent on Neomuna. The final warning Strand sidearm actually reads, "I realize often in times of rest how my mind wanders its own furthermost reaches, and how the answers to my most vexing questions present themselves at that time with absolutely no fanfare. This phenomenon is worth studying in its own right by people much smarter than I, but I digress. My most recent revelation comes in regard to our current pursuits with atmospheric spectrometer number 003A, which is aka Final Warning, as I have heard it being called around the lab. The odd capabilities this Final Warning harbors have long been suspected by Dr. Sundaresh to be a byproduct of the Veil, replicating energy signatures we most often observe in fluid dynamics. With that in mind, I propose we begin testing the ability to engage the energy using both the Magnus and gyroscopic effects. We attempt to create a paracausal skipping stone, if you will. How we accomplish this remains to be seen, but I encourage you to not spend the next few days thinking about it, as we will discuss it at the next staff meeting. And the Veil is both the foundation for the Neomuna technological advances and a paracausal lightning rod. Both of these things combine in harmony to create the Cloud Ark, and it's also a focal point for Strand power. Now, you're probably wondering, if the Veil is the OXA Machine, how is it also paracausal? This is where we actually tie things together. At the very beginning of this video, we listened to a broadcast from Jisoo Calorando. One of the lines from that dialogue we ignored for the time being because we weren't ready to broach that topic. But now, let's dive in. The broadcast starts with scientists continue to study the alien structure that the Witness created from the remains of the Traveler. Now, given what we know, I don't believe the Witness created the Veil, at least not entirely. We know that the Traveler was injured during its battle with the Pyramid Fleet during the collapse. And if the Veil was just pieces of the Traveler, then the Witness could just make another one. And if the Veil was primordial and contains records of ancient civilizations, then it can't just be made during the collapse. That doesn't fit our timeline. What if the Witness already had the OXA Machine? And to create his paracausal Einstein-Rosen bridge, he needed more than a machine. He needed paracausal power connected to the Traveler and infused with the machine that allowed consciousness to traverse time and space, merging together pieces of the Traveler, darkness power, and the OXA Machine creates the mechanism needed for the Witness to travel wherever or possibly whenever. In the final week of the Vex Calendar mission, we get to see the Veil up close inside of the Vex network. Now, as we approach, Mithrax is dumbfounded because according to him, the paracausal cannot be predicted, meaning it's impossible for the Vex to just simulate a paracausal object. But here, right in front of us is a paracausal simulation. This is only possible because Asher created the simulation manually, studying both the Vex and the pyramids. This most definitely confirms that the veil contains both light and dark power. Hell, just look at it. It's kind of obvious. Now, Bungie's concept art for the veil would also support this theory. The lead concept artist at Bungie, Daima Goranov, described the veil on Twitter as a physical manifestation of incomprehensible cosmic energy, window into the mind and the memory of the universe. The veil appears to be divided into separate pieces. One, a psychedelic machine encased in darkness. The other, a growth of a plant, similar to the tree of silver wings. The Vex simulation doesn't have the interior structure inside the dark half. This is also explained because the darkness doesn't know how to remake the OXA Machine, or else they would have made another veil. And the Vex don't know how to make it either, hence the copycat veil. Now, Asher, by proxy, wouldn't be able to replicate the OXA Machine, only the paracausal elements intertwined within it. Now, during the first collapse, Savathun stole this machine, now called the Veil, hid it on Neomuna. Maya, Sundaresh, and her team of researchers found the Veil, and Maya, who already discovered the existence of the OXA from the Vex network, knew the capabilities of such a device because she had created a failed mimic of it in the past. Equipped with this knowledge, the Ishtar Collective began studying the Veil and soon used its psychic and paracausal power to create the Cloud Arc. Now, if none of our arguments have convinced you yet, revisiting the Lightfall's Collector's Edition lore books, we left one key detail out of our earlier excerpt. My father names me for a star, I say. Nothing to do with war. Yes, but the star Kaida was named for a myth, not an old homeworld myth either. A myth from Age of Cells. When we conquered the stars, surely you know it, assuming you've been briefed on the OXA. The Doomed and the Damned left the record of their downfall in the OXA. Your star got its name from the oldest myths in that archive. And when your mother told your father that story, the star became your name. A prayer that all will go as it must. And the way it must go is struggle. Ayat. Not a word in Olorent or any other Cabal tongue, but Kaino means something else. Yes, it may not always go as it needs to go. A good name for a soldier. A strange name for a daughter, I say. Your father chose it for your mother's sake, out of love. Kaino's name given by her father is from a story recorded in the OXA Machine. If the Veil is the OXA, then in the final battle of Lightfall, we just killed Callus under the very machine he drew forth Kaino's name from, hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. The same machine that was instrumental in Callus's exile from the Cabal Empire was also the very thing that led to his downfall. So guys, that's our theory. It's the best we got. If the Veil isn't the OXA, then I don't know what the hell else it could be. If you have your own theories on what the Veil is, leave them down in the comments below. And keep in mind, we are not a lore channel, so if you really want to get way more in depth, big shout out to Mylan and Bife. We actually had to dig through a ton of old lore pieces, and their videos were invaluable. So please go check them out. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.